Okay, class. So, good day once again. This is my type of recording this video, but anyway, it's fine. So, I believe that you have already watched the video that I sent you, a lecture from Professor Farhad. So, this time we're going to have another example on factoring. So, we have here, Colony Company sold the accounts receivable without recourse. Take note, this is without recourse for 5,300,000. The entity received 5 million cash immediately from the factor. So 5,300,000 minus 5 million, so there is still 300,000. The 300,000 shall be received once the factor has verified that none of the accounts receivable is in dispute, meaning is in question. The accounts receivable had a face amount of 6 million. The entity had previously established an allowance for bad debts of 350,000 in connection with such accounts. So we are required to compute for the gain or loss in factoring, and since we already have the net proceeds, no, so loss in factoring na i-compute natin. But in case we don't have net proceeds yet, then i-compute muna natin yung net selling price because we cannot compute for the loss in factoring not unless we compute for the net selling price. Okay? So, yung net proceeds naman, okay na yung pwedeng i-compute doon if may relevance siya, lalo na pagdating sa journal entries natin. Okay, so how do we compute for loss in factoring? That is net selling price. That's 5,300,000. Why 5,300,000? Because that is the amount, the gross selling price. And since we don't have any other charges except for the factor sold back, so we will deduct only 0. Okay? So basically, your gross selling price here and your net selling price is the same. That is 5,300,000. And then we are going to deduct our carrying amount or the book value of our accounts receivable. So the gross amount here is 6 million minus the allowance for bad debts of 350. We have a carrying amount of the accounts receivable at 5,650,000. So you deduct that from 5,300,000, that is 350,000. By the way, this is just a coincidence that the allowance for doubtful accounts is equal to the loss on factoring. Okay, it doesn't go that way all the time. Okay, so what will be our entries now? Since the proceeds is given here, which is 5 million, so we will debit cash of 5 million. And then, since it is written here, yung receivable from factor, so just simply copy that, receivable from factor, which is 300,000. And then the 350,000 loss in factoring. And then, of course, your allowance for bad debts, you're going to close that one, 350,000 also. Make sure that all your total debits is equal to your credit, which will be credited to accounts receivable. Okay, so this is factoring without recourse. Ibig sabihin, it is just a casual sale. Okay, another problem here. Cindy Company factored 750,000 of accounts receivable at year end. Control was surrendered. Take note of this, class. Control was surrendered. Ayan. The factor accepted the accounts receivable subject to recourse for non-payment. Okay. So expect that we will have recourse liability here. The fair value of the recourse obligation is 20,000 sold given yung fair value ng recourse obligation. The factor assessed a fee of 2% and retained a holdback equal to 4% of the accounts receivable. In addition, the factor also charged 12% interest computed in a weighted average time to maturity of 51 days. Okay, so how do we compute for our cash proceeds here? We have the accounts receivable. This is our gross receivables amounting to 750,000. And then we will deduct factoring fee. The factoring fee is actually 2% of accounts receivable, which is 750,000. So, magkano ba yung 750,000 times 0.02. So, mag-deduct tayo ng 15,000. And then, we will also deduct interest, okay, of 750,000 times 12%, and then times 51 over 365. So, saan kinuha yun? Kinopya ko lang yun. 51 over 365. So, that's 750 times 0.12 times 51 by 365. So, you'll get 12,000. You have to deduct that also. Okay, 12,575. Round up na lang tayo to nearest whole number. And before we proceed further, let us determine this is our net selling price. Ma'am, why do we need to do that? Because we will be using that if ever we need to compute for the loss and factoring or the cost of factoring. 750 minus 15 minus 12,575. Our net selling price is 722,425. And then we're going to deduct the factors holdback. Take note, the factors holdback is a receivable. Receivable din yun, account receivable from factor. Factors holdback is 4% of 750,000. Okay, so that is 0.4, 30,000. So we're going to deduct that as well. Ayun. Okay, so how much na is the proceeds or yung cash received natin? Proceeds from factoring. Okay. Proceeds meaning yun ang pera na tanggap ng entity. So 722,425 minus 30,000. So you have 692,425. That is the amount of cash that we receive, the proceeds from receivables. Okay, the next question is what total amount should be recognized initially as loss on factoring? Okay, there are methods on how to compute for that one. So, pwede siyang gumawa tayo ng journal entry. At saka, pwede rin na i-compute mo siya. So, parang ganito. Factoring fee. Kopyahin lang natin yung 15,000 na yan. Kasi mga expenses mo yun normally ang loss and factoring. Then we have interest of 12,575. And then, syempre, meron tayong recourse obligation amounting to 20, magkano yun? 20,000. So, this is one way. Or pwedeng diretso na sa journal entry 15 plus 12,575 plus 20. So, this is 47,575. This is your loss on factoring. That is actually your total loss on factoring, no? Kasi hindi pa natin nalalaman kung ano mangyari in the future. So, paano ba siya gagawing entry? Okay, ganito entry. Debit cash. Okay, how much cash are we going to receive? 692,425. 692,425. And then, since this is not a casual factoring, so spell out natin yung mga expenses. So, we will debit also due from factor, or you can also use receivable from factor. Okay, 30,000. And then, you have the factoring fee. 15,000. And then, interest expense of magkano ulit yun? 12,575. Tapos yung loss on recourse obligation. So, hindi tayo mag-record ng loss on factoring. Kasi, this is not a casual factoring. Bakit factoring tuloy ang nasulat ko? Loss on recourse obligation. Okay. That is amounting to 20,000. That refers to our liability actually. And then we credit accounts receivable. 750,000. And then since given yung fair value ng recourse liability natin, so we will credit as well recourse liability. Or pwede rin you may use liability to factor. That is 20,000. So kumbaga, kung hindi magbabayad si customer, ang madagdag lang sa loss natin is yung sa recourse obligation. Pero, paano kung si customer ay magbabayad? So what will happen? You're going to reverse the recourse liability. So you debit if AR is fully paid or fully collected. Okay. So, magde-debit tayo ng recourse liability para ma-close na siya. And then we will credit loss on recourse obligation. Take note, this happens in the same year. That is amounting to 20,000. This one is also 20,000. And if ever walang returns, then we will also have another entry for the collection. So debit cash. Then we credit due from factor. Amounting to 30,000. Gusto ko talaga itong tablet gamitin. And yung sa notes ko. Okay, due from factor. So this is collection of factors holdback. Holdback. Yun. Okay. So, paano naman kung what if natin, the customer or the accounts are not collected by the factor. So, ano yung entry natin? Okay. So, instead na mag-credit tayo ng ang tawag dyan, instead na mag-credit tayo ng loss on recourse obligation, sige na nga, cash na talaga yan kasi tayo ang magbabayad. So, debit tayo ng recourse liability amounting to 20,000 and credit cash. Ayan, kasi hindi na nabayaran yung accounts receivable natin. And of course, ganon din, we will repeat the same entry here. So, copy and then paste lang natin siya. Then we're going to paste it here. Ayun. Okay. So, that's it, no? Now, question, pwede bang can we compound this two entry? Yes, of course. Pwede naman siya. So, what will be your entry if i-compound natin siya? Debit tayo ng recourse liability. Tapos, magka-credit tayo ng due from factor of 30,000 or since malaki yung due from factor natin, so pwede tayo magde-debit ng cash. So, ganito. Debit cash, 10,000 and then recourse liability. Paano na-compute yung 10,000 na cash? That is 30 minus 20. Recourse liability. That is, magkano ulit yun? 20,000. And credit due from factor. 30,000. Ayun. So, that's how you do it, no? This is actually recurring yun na, hindi na to casual na factoring. So, ito yung factoring na regular na, para may continuing involvement. Okay? Sige. So, I guess that would be all. If you still have other information or like, okay, sige, pwede nyo subukan. May problem dyan si Sir Ray Ocampo dyan sa libro ninyo. So, you may answer that one because there's a series of information there. Try to answer that one. You can have it checked with me if you like. Okay, so that would be all. Thank you.